when society collapses, when the world ends, and when might makes right, and everyone has the potential to become judge, jury, and executioner, humanity will, like always, find strength in numbers. But what if the numbers can't be trusted? What if your fellow human is just as likely to slit your throat in your sleep like a wild, hungry animal? The only answer might be to simply remain alone. But what is one to do when that is not an option? In this situation, your greatest strength is going to be your ability to be a judge of character, knowing who you can trust and who you cannot. And your gun, of course. No, I Am Not a Human is a game with a deceptively simple premise. Temperatures started rising to unbearable levels, the sun is scorching the earth, and going out during the day is prohibitive. The only option is going out at night, but as if that wasn't enough, a new threat has quite literally emerged. Monsters resembling your fellow man, attempting to infiltrate your home under the guise of helpless people in need of assistance, only to stab you in the back when you least expect. They call them visitors. They are all over the news. What little remains of the government has dedicated itself to a visitor hunt. Meanwhile, crazed gunmen are taking matters into their own hand, with little regard to the innocent people they might hurt in the process. But one might start wondering, what is a visitor? I mean, we know what they are, creatures posing as humans with an insatiable desire to kill. But what are they, really? What is it that we know about visitors? I think that one particularly good aspect of the game is that we are never told directly. We are offered plenty of information regarding visitors, how to distinguish them from actual humans, and how they act and behave. But we are never directly told or explained what they are, leaving that up to the player to wonder and theorize about. And that's exactly what I'm going to do tonight. So, when attempting to come up with a theory regarding something, or really anything at all, the best way to start is by figuring out what is it that we know, rather than what we don't know. As I already stated, we know that visitors have a desire to kill people, and they can uncannily bear the resemblance of other humans. How they achieve that is unknown for the moment, and as to why they desire to kill humans, that is also up to debate. But for now, we are going to rule it off as a purely instinctual desire. So, how do we actually identify a visitor? Information regarding on how to identify visitors is provided to us pretty much only through the television, and while the television isn't always completely right, of course, it is the most reliable source that we have. Signs appear to derive from FEMA reports studying and analyzing captured visitors in order to see what differentiates them from regular humans, and releasing this information to various television broadcasts as a sort of a public service announcement. The signs that the TV will inform us about are going to be the following: white teeth, dirt under the fingernails, red bloodshot eyes, hairless armpits, a dark aura in aura photographs, bleeding gums, skin rashes or irritations, rapid eye movement, fungal growths, and possibly bugs crawling out or inside ears. Although this last one is perhaps the most mysterious and uncertain of them all, as nobody other than our character appears to have any knowledge regarding this sign, having seemingly picked it up by what appeared to be a hijacked television broadcast. All of these are signs or symptoms that can help distinguish a visitor from a human, and yet none of these seem to be a guarantee. The game features a variety of possible guests, and whether they are visitors or not is generally random, although a few encountered ones are guaranteed to always be visitors regardless. Checking the signs of these canonic visitors is, as I said previously, inconsistent. Some will show perfect white teeth, such as the Immortal Man and the Hunchback Girl, while the Babushka and Big Mama will show old yellow ruined teeth, and this is a recurrent effect on pretty much every sign, with the most consistent one appearing to be the aura cam photo. But even that will sometimes result in dark auras on human guests. And if this didn't make the situation complicated enough, it is important to keep in mind that sometimes the signs don't matter at all, and I'll give you an example for that. With the Widow. The Widow is a guest that can show up at our house, asking to be let in. She is seen dragging around the corpse of her husband, as she refuses to bury him. If inspected, she will display bright white teeth, normal hands, red eyes, a fungal growth under her armpits, a photograph with a dark aura behind her, and normal ears. That is a total of 4 signs. 4 signs of being a visitor, and yet the widow is one of the few guests that are guaranteed to be always human during every playthrough. And the signs? They make sense. She has white teeth because she took good care of her dental hygiene before the apocalypse started. Her eyes are red because she has cried many days and nights for the loss of her husband, and the fungal growth can probably be attributed to a lack of corporal hygiene and a possible infection from trudging what is quite literally a cadaver on her back for days on end. So what does this tell us? That the signs to identify the visitors are a lie? That they're just make-believe by the television? Complete misinformation by FEMA? Or are the signs to be trusted and upheld to like the gospel of this new doggone world? Well, yes and no. The truth is in fact somewhere in the middle. While these signs are indeed not always a guarantee of someone's real identity, guests who can show up both as humans and visitors will undergo certain changes, such as their teeth widening or fungal infections growing under their armpits or displaying a different aura in photos. It is clear that being a visitor does come with certain changes, but not every single sign is a guarantee, and the signs are also questionable at best, most of the time. There appears to be only one sign which can confirm with 100% certainty whether a person is a visitor or not. While it is never explicitly stated, visitors appear to have a different internal structures than that of humans. So different in fact that even someone completely untrained in human anatomy is capable of knowing whether someone is a visitor or not. After shooting a guest in our home, their body will be displayed differently depending on what they wear. Humans will be placed in garbage bags, while visitors will let out a distorted scream and remain in place, revealing what appears to be a messy conglomeration of flesh tissue and organs. Whether this serves as a silent nod to the idea that it is easy to distinguish a dead human from a dead visitor due to internal differences, or whether this serves purely as a game mechanic and has in fact zero relevance to the game lore and story is up for the debate. Personally, I'm leaning towards the first option and consider that the developers opted for a show don't tell type of clue here. The television is of course not the only source of information we have in regard to visitors. The rest of the information regarding what is currently going on outside of the house that we never seem to leave derives in fact from the conversation that we can have with some of the guests that we invite inside of our home, with different guests having different opinions on theories on the matter, with visitors themselves at times even being unsure or unclear about their own true nature. Something real bad seems to be headed our way. I just got off the phone with my cousin. She told me the news is saying something weird is going on with the sun, and that there are people coming up from underground. They're calling them visitors, for whatever reason. God knows why they're calling them that. I guess it's because they're visitors to Earth, or the surface at least. Or maybe it's because they're going around trying to get into people's houses. This is pretty much the first information we receive on the visitors in-game, and all we are told is that they are coming from beneath the surface. It's important to keep in mind that our neighbor does clearly state that this is something he heard from his cousin and hasn't witnessed a visitor coming from the underground himself. I really like this detail. It's the first dialogue we have and it already sets the tone of the game perfectly. Just how much are we willing to believe this? We are not calling our neighbor a liar, but he himself seems to be pretty clueless as to what is going on. His only information is coming from his cousin, sort of a I heard from a guy who heard from a guy who heard from another guy type of situation, if you get what I'm saying. It establishes the idea that information is scarce, and the only information that will be available to us is going to be conjecture and rumors with little to no proof at all. You will not believe what's in these files. Seriously, some of it's actually pretty darn fascinating. Take this one for instance. This theory is especially curious. It claims that visitors aren't actually real, that they're part of a secret government plan to prune the population. Quite a compelling read, and oddly, it kind of makes sense if you really think about it. Now consider, overpopulation is a known problem, yes? It is simply the truth of our society. Suppose this is how the government has decided to handle it? Still digging through those papers? Precisely, and I've got plenty where those came from too, if you're interested. Here, take this one for instance. It claims that FEMA are the visitors, and since those suits they wear cover them head to toe, there is no way to test them. Seems plausible, no? Fascinating, particularly where they note what FEMA really stands for, Facility for Eradicating Mankind Altogether. Or perhaps it was something else? So, what have you uncovered this time? Visitors, skinwalkers. They sound like something straight out of some sci-fi novel, right? But that's just it. Listen to this. One report talks about a pale man seen wandering the streets. Although I must note, the author made a rather obvious mistake. They claim there are two pale, creepy-looking figures out there, one seen through the windows and one standing at doors. Poppycock, isn't it obvious they're the same entity? I dare guess the window distorted the author's view, a perceptual error. Still, fascinating stuff, no? If there is one thing you remember, let it be this. There is only one truth. The visitors are brain parasites. You must wear earplugs at all times. Don't give them the slightest opportunity. The conspiracy theories definitely has some of the most informative dialogues regarding visitors, although the credibility of his claims is completely up for debate. I personally believe for this character to be a sort of a nod from the developers of the game towards the theorist part of the game's fandom, and that's how we are portrayed. This is particularly hinted at its dialogue where he says, one report talks about a pale man seen wandering the streets. They claim there are two pale creepy looking figures out there, one seen through the windows and one seen standing at doors. Isn't it obvious that they're the same entity? I dare guess the window distorted the author's view, a perceptual error. This dialogue line definitely feels like it was meant to poke fun at the people theorizing that there are two pale men visitors. Although all things considered, the conspiracy theorist does raise a really good point. If FEMA agents are constantly covered in hazmat suits, then how can we know if they are not visitors themselves? Any sign that would identify them as such will be, after all, impossible to notice, given their hazmat suits. And FEMA does seem to enjoy a good murderous rampage. Just something to keep in mind. Did you see something out there? Sure did, damn it. I was digging a grave. One some fella ordered. He's standing there, watching me work. I was digging and then, bam, the shovel hit something. Thought it was a rock, but no. A hand reached up out of the soil. It was a visitor, crawling up out of the ground. And that guy? He just laughed. I ran like hell and didn't look back. Didn't dare go home. Figured it's safer in a crowd. Why did you become a gravedigger? Huh? Oh, my job. Yeah, I don't know actually. Cemetery is kinda like a library, you know? But these books aren't for reading. They just lie there, quiet. I used to know every grave, who's where, how their arms were folded, what suit they had on, their names. Then one day I'm digging a fresh hole, right? Normal day. Nothing weird. Feels deep enough. And then, bam, empty. Empty, I tell ya. But the paper said someone should have been down there. Some guy, dead for sure. I remember he had a mustache. But poof, gone like dew in the morning. If a dead man disappears, is that like dying all over again? What did you do when you found the empty grave? So I sat down, right on the edge, looked in. Nothing. Then I look up and far off, I see someone standing there. Watching, like at a funeral. No eyes, but teeth white as hell. Glowing almost. Smiling. Just standing there. I damn near shit myself, I ain't gonna lie. I ran real fast, that part I'm good at. He didn't come after me though, just disappeared, like smoke. Some fucked up shit. That's when all the visitors' mess started. Got me thinking, maybe it ain't the dead coming back. Maybe visitors are folks who should have been buried, but weren't. Used to be death didn't bother me. You die, they bury you, done deal. Now, who's left to bury you? And even if someone dies, how do you know they stay buried? I saw a grave I know I filled, and it was empty. But I buried him myself. Now I'm thinking maybe my grave will be empty too. Maybe I'm a visitor already. Where do you think these visitors come from? You ever notice the way they look so damn familiar? They don't look like a person, but like the memory of a person. I got a theory. You sure you wanna hear it? Alright, here goes. Maybe visitors ain't the dead. Maybe they're thoughts, the ones we didn't bury. Fears, regrets, feelings you never let go. They pile up, and when it's too quiet in the dirt, they crawl out. Not looking for flesh, looking for attention. The more you're scared, the closer they get, because you remember them, and anything remembered wants to be alive. The Gravedigger's dialogue is particularly interesting because he is someone who has pretty much witnessed firsthand someone raising from the ground, and firsthand experiences like these appear to be pretty rare in the game. So I was driving this passenger and then, well, you know how it goes. Turns out he wasn't who he said he was. Now he's not there, and neither is my car. What happened to your passenger? I ain't exactly paranoid of nothing, but he was a visitor. I kinda caught a glimpse in the rear view, and saw those billboard white teeth, you know? You happy with how things turned out? Nah, bruv. I'm glad people stopped hiding behind masks for the most part, yeah? But the sheep ruin everything. The worst thing? A sheep in wolf's clothing. You mean a wolf in sheep's clothing? Nah, I'm talking about those cowards you lot call visitors. They was hiding underground like rats, waiting for us to go soft. Then they pop out using human morals. They play on our pit to make themselves hard to kill. We bear our fangs for a reason. Remind them we're the beast here, or they'll run us out. You still don't know? You haven't come face to face with the aliens? Very well, beamless human. I'll open your eyes to the truth. The visitors are the seeds of evil. They're the descendants of aliens who landed on Earth when the sun was younger and the grass was greener. Damned vassals who made their homes on Earth and inbred for centuries. And now they've climbed out from the depths and wish to claim our lands as their own. But the sun has decided to protect us, for this is our holy land. The sun shows no mercy on the blasphemers. Why would they have hid underground all this time otherwise? What happened back at your house? After the man sat me at the kitchen table, some guy came out from around the corner, blocked the exit. I wanted to scream or call for help, but my voice was lost in a sea of panic. I couldn't even make a sound. I just sat there, useless, like a deer in headlights. But then the big guy went to the fridge to get something. I realized that was my chance. I sprinted for the exit. It was like the fear gave me strength. I just ran and ran. I ran and never looked back. Well, I did. Until my legs gave out and I collapsed. Why didn't the sun burn you? I don't remember. I must have spent the whole night just lying there on the ground, and then... That's odd. I could have sworn I remembered everything that happened to me that day. Hang on, you don't think I might be a visitor? No, that can't be true. I remember my whole life. My childhood. My mom and dad. No! I'm not a visitor, right? Tell me I'm not a visitor. I have no idea who's a visitor and who isn't. What if you're a visitor? Will you kill me? Skin me alive? Peel it away? Have you gone crazy? I'm not crazy. I've seen the light. I am a visitor. We're as one with the humans, reflections, mirrors, one and the same. Together we shall welcome death. It's coming for us all. I think that this dialogue is rather important in the context of the game, because it establishes a very important point. Not all visitors are aware of the fact that they are visitors, or at least not at first. Regardless of that, visitors will still kill people even when they are unaware of being visitors, which can lead us to believe that certain visitors, excepting the self-aware ones, such as the Pale Man, the Ballerina, or Big Mama, might function like sleeper agents and only kill when certain conditions are met, perhaps even forgetting of the fact they killed someone to begin with the next day. "Oh darling, please don't let nobody in." "How do you plan to get your family back?" "I am fixing to. They'll make it out on their own, darling." "What do you mean?" "They might could crawl up through the muck, but on the other side. Fences and wires won't stop my babies. And if they ain't come from below, they'll just tear their zone apart, bless their hearts." After death, we reincarnate and live again. Then we die once more, and the cycle of rebirth continues on. I know how that sounds, but if you'd seen what I'd seen, you'd understand. Maybe the visitors were once human, then reborn. I can't say for sure. Where did the visitors come from? From the outskirts of town. Yeah, I know the quarantine zones are far from there, but I'm certain. I'm not superstitious, but they're the same demons people were talking about 2 years back. I don't know how they got into the city, but I do know who let them in. It was FEMA. The visitors aren't aliens, like a lot of people think. They're living creatures, not unlike you or me, and they're just as native to this planet as we are. Don't you find these so-called signs absurd? Nothing more than ordinary human traits? It's utter balderdash. White teeth mean someone's a visitor? There is no rational proof. I'm telling you, they're keeping something from us. To tell you the truth, after the hospitals closed their doors, I went to triage at one of the quarantine zones. I was hoping to learn something about the visitors and their signs, but sadly nothing ever came of it. We were never told where these signs came from or what they were supposed to mean. They just handed us a list of guidelines, told us who to label a visitor, who to let through. After that, I no longer felt like a doctor, more like a border guard stamping papers. So I started falsifying reports, help people escape. How come you're not still at the quarantine zones? Why do you ask? Are you trying to find out why I don't trust FEMA? Let's start with a hypothesis. Do you believe the visitors are some kind of virus? If yes, then I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. It's most likely not the case. Have you ever seen someone who seemed perfectly fine just moments ago suddenly change? Turn into a visitor right before your eyes? Exactly. There's never been a single case like that. You need to understand, FEMA is not in control of this situation. They only pretend they are. As you can see, there's a great variety of theories and ideas revolving around what visitors are, and as I stated at the beginning of the video, the game never gives a straight answer. And that's the beauty of it, really. But that doesn't stop us from forming our own theories and ideas, and in that regard I have formed 3 theories. For each theory I will present both supporting and opposing evidence, pretty much building the theory only to dismantle it down myself. But let's start with the first theory now. Visitors are not real. This theory is pretty self-explanatory. Visitors are not real. The only real thing is the sun, increasing in strength by the day, scorching the surface. Visitors are nothing but the people exposed to a new type of strong solar radiation, suffering perhaps an advanced or different form of sunstroke, causing them to lose their minds and go on murderous rampages. FEMA came up with the term of visitors and began spreading false rumors about the visitors being these creatures coming up from beneath the ground in order to increase panic within society and hold a better grip over it. The reason as to why the symptoms are so likely to be attributed to normal people as well is because FEMA wanted it to be so. Think about it. White teeth, red eyes, hairless armpits, rashes, bleeding gums, dirty fingernails, these are all physical signs that anyone could have at any time, and FEMA uses them to dispose of people that oppose them. Are you a person in a high place of political power that is objecting to FEMA? Well, you better hope you don't have white teeth, or FEMA now has the perfect excuse to dispose of you immediately. That is in fact something that happens on the 13th day as the television announces us the following. Breaking news. FEMA has just arrested a majority of government officials. The agency reports that some members of administration weren't identified as visitors. With the ministry no longer able to function, FEMA will assume the role of interim government. The idea that FEMA would lie about the existence of visitors to begin with, just as a maneuver to spread panic and gain power and authority, is not that much of a stretch, considering that throughout the game, FEMA proves itself to be anything but trustworthy. This theory is supported by the idea that, despite visitors being seemingly everywhere, and FEMA in itself being a supposedly agency dedicated to the capture and research of visitors, there is still no clear answer about what visitors are, where exactly they came from, and what is their true goal. Nothing but rumors and conjecture, as FEMA continues to gather up people, promising to return them while never doing so, with doctors themselves working in quarantine zones being kept in the dark about the true nature of visitors. Further proof of FEMA lying about the true nature of visitors is presented when the television announces that, according to authorities, studies show that a visitor is a human who comes in contact with an undetermined biological agent. Methods of transmission remains unknown, and FEMA urges everyone to stay alert for the signs of visitors. If you recall the previous information from the doctor who worked in the quarantine zone, he claims that visitors are anything but the result of a virus, raising the point that nobody has witnessed a person turning from human into a visitor, which is something true, as people that we take into our home as humans will never become visitors, even if they come in contact with other supposed visitors. In the end, visitors are nothing but people that have gone mad, both from the increased solar activity and the general societal collapse that brought an end to normalcy as everyone knew it, plunging the world into chaos. While this theory makes sense at first, let me bring the counter-arguments, with the first one being the existence of special visitors. This theory is based on the idea that visitors are essentially just regular people, and the whole threat is just vastly over-exaggerated by FEMA. But this would imply that everything else is pretty much grounded in reality, something that we already know not to be true, given the existence of the Pale Man. If he were to be just a regular crazed lunatic after all, I heavily doubt it would have been able to display its superhuman powers. The guy did pretty much take on a full squad of armed soldiers with nothing but its bare hands, and came out as the victor without even a scratch. Then there is the coat guy, holding what appears to be a literal void or black hole within its stomach, or the ballerina contorting into seemingly impossible positions. These events and more prove that there is definitely something more supernatural, or at least incomprehensible, going on currently within the universe of "No, I'm not a human," something far beyond a simple government conspiracy. Visitors are infected by a virus. This is another self-explanatory theory, and it implies that visitors are nothing but regular people, or at least used to be regular people, who got infected by a new virus, or rather an ancient virus. Given that the premise of this universe is that the sun has increased in its activity, causing the Earth's atmosphere and overall temperature to increase to the point of making it prohibitive to go outside during the day, it will make sense to think that most glaciers around the world will have melted off. It is entirely possible that one of such glaciers, after melting off, could have released an ancient virus trapped within itself, which is now spreading throughout the world, infecting people with something similar to a type of dormant rabies, whose symptoms are subtle and yet cause humans to enter what appears to be at times a sort of murderous rampage. With FEMA being aware of this fact and even wearing hazmat suits to protect themselves from possible contagion, they seem to be withholding this information from the public, releasing it in a TV broadcast later on. It is entirely possible for the virus in question to actually act dormant at first, awakening and taking control of people, or causing them to enter into this rabid murderous state only at times, with people infected by the virus being themselves unaware of it, which would explain as to why so many visitors, like the cashier girl, appear to be themselves unaware of the fact that they are visitors. On the other hand, the Pale Man, the ballerina, or Big Mama, these visitors that are aware of their own true nature and do nothing to disguise it, perhaps representing a victim of the virus in a sort of an advanced infection stage, with the Pale Man himself having completely succumbed to the virus and finding himself in a constant murderous rampage, its enhanced physical abilities possibly being attributed to the virus itself slowly changing its body into something far more resilient and stronger, enough to single-handedly dispatching of an entire squad of armed soldiers. This theory about visitors being just infected people actually has different sub-theories. As I said previously, visitors might be the result of some unknown pathogen, but other infections could be represented by a mind-controlling insect, which would explain first and foremost the sign related to people's ears, where certain visitors can present bugs crawling in and out of their ears. This is also suggested, as I've shown previously in one of the dialogues, by the conspiracy theorist, although how reliable of a source that guy is entirely up to you to decide. This could very well explain why FEMA, on a few occasions, is seen or reported to set various places on fire, perhaps as a countermeasure to destroy those insects and any possible nesting location. The reason why the insects turn the people into visitors is because through their mind control, they influence the host into seeking a safe shelter, a house or a building, and then to attack anyone who isn't infected and who could technically be a threat to themselves and their host. With the insects perhaps operating as a sort of a hive mind, this will also explain how the pale man, if he was to be infected, will be capable of knowing exactly whether we have visitors in our home or not. Another sub-theory regarding the infection is for the infection itself to be a fungal one, an odd strain of fungi capable of not only infecting people, but controlling their mind also. This would explain one of the signs, the armpit fungal infection. A brain-controlling fungal infection could be entirely possible. The Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, or the zombie ant fungus, is a type of fungi capable of infecting ants and controlling their dead bodies. This fungus in particular could be similar, with the fungus first infecting a host on the outside by depositing spores in a human's body, and then when the human host dies and it's subsequently buried, the fungus begins spreading rapidly as it now finds itself in complete darkness and covered in dirt with a host full of nutrients. After a few days or hours, the mushrooms take complete control of the body and they resurrect it into a sort of a zombie-like state, causing it to dig itself out of the ground, accessing its host's brain and making use of its past memories and experiences to carefully blend into society in order to find more victims to kill, bury, and repeat the process. This will also explain why the visitor's infection never occurs to people while they're still alive. While the armpit fungal infection is, in the first stage, someone needs to be quite literally buried in order for the entire infection to take place. The infection theory I personally believe to be really strong, but it's most definitely not foolproof, as it doesn't explain certain elements, while other elements directly contradict it. As we've already stated previously a few times, the idea of a biological pathogen infecting people and turning them into visitors seems unlikely. The doctor raises the point of no reports existing about someone being a human and becoming a visitor the next day or the other. At the same time, given that the doctor did work in the quarantine zone and was in direct contact with visitors, if visitors were indeed the result of a mind-controlling parasite, such as an insect or a mushroom, the doctor surely would have noticed. I'm willing to believe that he must have dissected a dead visitor's body more than once, unless that was a task strictly reserved for the higher-ups in FEMA, in order to keep volunteers such as the doctor in the dark in regards to the real nature of the visitors. Regardless of the infection type, be it a pathogen, a mind-controlling parasite, or a fungus, certain visitor symptoms make no sense. Starting with the white teeth, I doubt that the symptoms of an infection, regardless of its nature, will cause someone's teeth to whiten. We could of course simply rule this off as white teeth being FEMA propaganda, but we've already confirmed that not being the case, as different guests that can appear through our playthrough can be both humans and visitors, will actually present white teeth when they are visitors and yellow teeth when they are human, meaning that white teeth are indeed caused by either being or becoming a visitor. While the fungus requiring for someone to be buried in order to spread will require the dirt under the fingernail symptom, the brain parasite and the rabies-like pathogen will also have little to no correlation to that, unless those will also require the host to be buried first, perhaps as part of the incubation period. This argument can also be applied to pretty much most of the other symptoms or signs, although I could totally see a virus causing someone's eyes to become red, hair to start falling off from the armpits, gums to bleed, and rashes to appear over the body. One thing that remains unclear though is the aura cam, but I think that's just meant to be unclear. The whole aura cam photography does feel dubious as a sign. In fact, it gives off the feeling of a company attempting to make a profit off of the situation by selling these aura cams and aura films. Yet at the same time, we've confirmed that the aura cam appears to work, and pretty well at that, being actually fully capable of distinguishing between visitors and non-visitors, even revealing certain hidden details about some of our guests at times. I have initially considered the idea of the aura cam being nothing but a sort of thermal imaging type of technology, but I'm gonna be real, none of these pictures look like thermal imaging to me, so who knows. Visitors are the result of a divine punishment. This theory I'm really unsure about. I say that because in a way the idea of visitors being a paranormal type of entity would explain pretty much everything. And yet at the same time it feels like a lazy explanation, because in these cases anything that doesn't make sense can be simply attributed to the idea of it's paranormal / religious magic. But let's take it into consideration for a moment anyway. When we consider everything that happens in the game, there's quite a few of paranormal and unexplained phenomena taking place. The unnaturally monstrous pale man, who appears to be both superhuman in strength and omniscient in regards to the situation. The ballerina contorting her own body into a grotesque, blasphemous parody, corrupting the innocent and beautiful act of ballet into a bastardized spectacle of body horror. The code guy hosting what appears to be a literal black hole within its body. The existence of a godlike entity called Death in a super-dimensional space underneath our own house. A woman showing no initial signs of pregnancy, giving birth to a child mere days after her arrival. A prophet, seemingly capable of knowing what is to come, seemingly able to see and know things about yourself, about your home, about what's hiding underneath it. Photo cameras capable of reading the aura of people. The more we look, the more we find in terms of phenomena that just cannot be explained through science alone. The end days are here. Be it God, the earth, the sun, or the entire universe, but some higher power has decided to punish humanity for some reason. The sun is scorching the earth. The dead are rising from their graves. Cities are collapsing, as trust in your fellow man could be both your doom and your salvation. The situation feels a bit too karmic, a bit too ironic to be merely a coincidence. The visitors are nothing but dead people that have been buried and now return to life. Why are they committing those atrocities? Why are they killing their once fellow man? Because they have been ordered to do so by a higher power, be it God, the devil, or the mysterious death itself that we encounter in one of the endings. Something appears to be guiding these visitors. Even the pale man, the most fearsome of all, judging by his dialogue, appears to be nothing but the lackey of someone or something greater than all of us. Who sent you here? You did what needed. Why know about rest? Fine. Someone sent me, but didn't say what next. They told me this will be our last little chat. Everything is coming to an end, either by our hands or your own. What do you mean? I'm just telling you what I was told. That's all. Do you feel it? Death creeping closer and closer? It's breathing down your necks already. Why do you keep coming here? You only just now thought to ask that? Have you considered that you were chosen? They sent me for a reason. To change something? But the outcome's always the same. You'll die. If not today, then tomorrow. If not tomorrow, then later. You will disappear. The end times are here. Humanity is being punished. Humanity is being judged. We are being judged. And what is being judged is the empathy for our fellow man. The visitors are creatures whose purpose is to sow chaos and death, and the pale man is judge, jury, and executioner, tasked with punishing those who are unwilling or unable to help their own kind. Yes, you might show empathy by allowing everyone into your home, and you will be judged and killed by harboring visitors inside, even if you did so through an act of selflessness. But nobody has ever claimed for the pale man to be in any form fair or correct. He plays by his own rules. He is preying on the lonely and the weak after all, and there is perhaps no greater weakness in this situation than being a poor judge of character. To allow visitors into your home and put the life of those you are sheltering at risk If you're alone, you did not help your fellow man. If there are only visitors inside, you have put other potential guests at risk through your weakness of being unable to refuse some, sending them away, and both of these are offenses punishable by death in the eyes of the pale man. There is no logical explanation as to what is happening, there is no certainty as to what visitors are, because in the end, it does not matter. The day of the reckoning is here, and through death and burial, you will be born anew as a visitor, ready to continue spreading the message. I want to thank you for watching this video until the end. It is highly appreciated, and as always, I would like to thank this channel's members for their support. If you have any thoughts or personal theories regarding visitors, let me know down in the comments. As always, thanks for staying until the very end, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye, and have a good night.